Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my October 2020 page 112 tag. I might be filming this at the most ridiculous time given how the sun is coming through the window, but I love making these videos personally. So I figured I'd just do it as quickly as I can when I had time. So here we go. The page 112 tag was started by Sean the Book Maniac, and he fashioned it off of a French literary prize where they were able to make a short list or a long list of books based solely on the writing of page 112. So there's no context of the story from the pages before that. We're just going on the writing quality of how that one page might fill you in a little bit after perhaps some of the most vigorous editing of the first few chapters happens. And I've been using this tag for much of this year to clear off my physical TBR shelves, which have gotten incredibly big. And I'm only going up to books I've acquired up to 2019, and I still have this many left in my handy-dandy cats and bookshelves mug. What I do is that I pick 3 at random from the mug, then I grab them, I read page 112 from each of them, and then I choose one of those books to join my monthly TBR. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, going for book number 1. Here we go. A Dual Inheritance by Joanne Hirshhorn. Okay, so this is one that I found from the Jewish Book Council website, where I find a lot of the Jewish novels that interest me, and I acquired it from, I believe, my library bookstore probably a few years ago at this point, which is always nice to get one of those older ones out of the way, so yeah. Then we have book number 2. Hopefully going into a new area here. What We Lose by Zinzi Clemens. Yeah, Missy, hi. Yeah, I think this is a new area because this is definitely a 2019 book that I acquired from Mahogany Books, which is a Black-owned bookstore in Anacostia in DC. It's a very Black neighborhood as well. And I always want to patronize my local indies, so this is the one that I got from that bookstore just recently. And finally, I will go for book number 3, maybe this one that's sort of taking up a lot of space. We'll see what it is. This is Syracuse by Delia Ephron, which I think I got a year or 2 ago, maybe hopefully 2-ish years ago by now, at Capitol Hill Books, which is a crammed to the gills used bookstore in Capitol Hill, which I missed going to this year because of coronavirus. I try to go once a year at least. Although for a store that's crammed to the gills, I often don't find things on my TBR list, and I try not to buy too much off of that list because I already have too many books that are catching my attention. And I remember I was browsing in the store for at least a couple of hours before I was able to peel one of the layers of books back, and I found this one, which was on my list once again, I believe, from the Jewish Book Council. So hopefully it will live up to how long it took to find it. Okay, and from there I will go grab the books and read the pages and give you my thoughts. Okay, I'm back to talk about and read from these 3 books, starting with book number 1, A Dual Inheritance by Joanna Hirshhorn. This boat had an elevator. He thought of that boy with his brand new bicycle, the excitement in his voice. Ed wanted to ride this elevator up and down one more time and memorize the slight dip in gravity that occurred before the doors opened up into the staterooms. Instead, he followed his friends to an already crowded party. He listened as Helen explained how 7 summers ago her great Aunt Mary had given a party right here, and how everyone had arrived full of morbid sentiments, as it was generally understood that great Aunt Mary wasn't long for this earth. And yet she seemed to be going nowhere except Palm Beach each winter. She was 103 and drinking champagne in a deck chair. All the women in my family are addicted to champagne, continued Helen, making her way through the crowd. Aunt Mary claims my grandmother put it in my mother's baby bottle, and that she did the same with us. Aunt Mary, Helen shouted, this is my fiancé, Hugh Shipley. The old lady struck out her claw-like hand to Ed. Oh no, said Helen, this is our friend, Ed Kantowitz. Ed shook her hand. It was surprisingly warm. This is Hugh, Helen repeated. Aunt Mary looked up and smiled. She'd lost her eyebrows in addition to whatever tautness her skin had once possessed, but her cheekbones were prominent, her eyes bright green. Hugh gave her a kiss on the cheek. For a moment I thought you were marrying the Jewish fellow. Oh, said Helen, trying to laugh it off. No, I'm afraid not. I'm sure you're a fine young man, the old lady said to Ed. Her voice was shaky, vaguely British. She was not remotely out of it, nor did she seem cruel. She only wanted to get it straight. Somehow, this was worse. I need another drink, said Hugh, leading Ed away. I've about reached my limit, Hugh added. I think there's a 2 a.m. ferry to New London. But just as Ed was about to reassure Hugh that he was fine, just fine, he realized that Hugh might not be. That Hugh looked genuinely uncomfortable. Just as Ed was about to start in on the benefits of lightening up, Helen's father stepped out of the elevator, and Ed watched Mr. Ordway say hello to each and every person, ghosting along the surface of the crowd like some kind of seriously skilled professional, more prophet than politician. I'll stop there and say I think this was a very strong page 112. I mean, actually, technically went a little bit into page 113, but anyway. We have a really nicely set up scene, sort of a very fortunate page for a random page where there's dialogue and scene setting and learning a fair bit about some of the characters, especially Aunt Mary, who, even if she's not an important character, at least you know a fair bit about her from this, about how people think she's, you know, at death's door, but maybe isn't. And there's something intriguing going along with the two men that Helen seems to be involved with here that, well, first of all, well, Ed has assumed her fiancé, maybe because Helen's Jewish, I don't know, but anyway, but her actual fiancé seems a bit jumpy. And then that intro to her father as politician or prophet, I mean, like, that's like a big man, obviously, so you can, perhaps I'm reading a little too much into how there could possibly be some tension there. But just on the page itself, you know, we have this, you can tell it's a well-to-do family because they're throwing parties in stately locations with huge elevators and that sort of thing, and have a big history with that, and then you just get the back-and-forth banter between everybody, and I thought this was a very strong page, and the one thing that is my problem is that this is a bit of a chunkster of a book. It's almost 500 pages long, and as you know, I'm already behind as it is on the reading I want to do this month, so I might be cheating again this month with the page 112 tag. So let's go on to book number 2, What We Lose, a novel by Zinzi Clemens. This book has a lot of short chapters and also illustrations and graphs in it, so for page 112 I think I'll just be reading all of this. When I visualized my emotions, I would picture a graph. Sometimes I would try to draw it, and it helped to see my feelings organized into a neat line, a process that connoted order and straightforward representation. When I drew the graph, I pictured the x-axis as time, the y as strength of emotion. There was a spike around the diagnosis when I first became aware that something was wrong, when the suggestion of her mortality, the uncertainty of the situation, was first introduced and, by virtue of its newness, was especially severe. Then the line went down when I became used to the idea, and I was too wrapped up in the details, treatments, prognoses, outcomes, to be in touch with the emotion. My return home was another spike, and after that a steady, slow climb at a high altitude until her death. At the point of her death, the line circles inward into itself, to infinity, disappearing into infinite fractions. It was so beyond comprehension and feeling that it wasn't able to be captured on a plane of hurt or sadness or any single human emotion. Loss is a straightforward equation. 2 minus 1 equals 1. A person is there, then she is not. But a loss is beyond numbers, as well as sadness and depression and guilt and ecstasy and hope and nostalgia, all those emotions that experts tell us come along with death. Minus 1 person equals all of these, in unpredictable combinations. It is a sunny day that feels completely gray, and laughter in the midst of sadness. It is utter confusion. It makes no sense. You can tell this is a very different book than the first one. It's much more internal, contemplative. We are just sort of sitting with the narrator's thoughts rather than going out to an external location with external people and having that be a bulk of the action. I am biased by the fact that I remembered from this book that it has to do with a daughter dealing with the death of her mother. So I had that, bad bit of outside information kind of with me that I remembered for this one. And I also knew about all the graphs that I saw as I was flipping through the book. And in all honesty, I think the first part of this page 112 didn't stick with me as much, like, describing the ups and downs of a graph. It could just be personal preference, because once you start talking about feelings, it's like, bam, I'm there. And once we get to, loss is the equation of 2 minus 1 is 1, but there's all this emotion that also comes with it. I was like much more invested in that part than I was in the first part. But I still, I'm intrigued because, I can tell that it's about this such a visceral human emotion of losing somebody. And I like the way, and I appreciate the way that it was handled, especially in the second half, but probably the first would grow on me given the contours of the rest of this book as well. But I don't think I'll be reading it for the tag, but I will look forward to reading it when I can. And finally, book number 3 is Syracuse by Delia Ephron. In this case, I think I'll start on the very end of page 111 because it's epigraph on a gravestone of a particular poet, and then I'll stop a little early, just saying. This grave contains all that was mortal of a young English poet who, on his deathbed, in the bitterness of his heart, at the malicious power of his enemies, desired these words to be engraven on his tombstone. Here lies one whose name was writ in water, Feb 24th, 1821. The malicious power of his enemies. Who were they? Said Lizzie. Fate, his publisher, the riffraff, aka public, that didn't buy his books. Maybe Keats didn't know who his enemies were. Do you always know who's out to get you? Said Lizzie. That remark skipped by, unremarked on, noted only in retrospect. In life, one rarely knows which remarks of the hundreds uttered in the course of a day will turn out to be auspicious. In fiction, foreshadowing is planted and flagged in some, hopefully or desperately, subtle way. Drama demands it. As we sat on the grass and lay back, propped up on our elbows, I confessed that my book was a bear, that I wasn't at the end, as I'd led her to believe, but blocked in the middle. Lizzie listened, making cooing sounds of comfort. Don't worry, you'll get there. I have a good feeling about this one, Michael. How did this day become about me? I said, laughing. It's hard to be in a cemetery and not have it be about you, said Lizzie. Not you specifically. I'm not criticizing you. I mean, every feeling comes up here. Okay, so this book is different again, I think, because it's kind of aware of itself by way of breaking that fourth wall. Because, it's about writers, obviously. The protagonist is stuck on a book and they're looking at Keats's grave. But there's that section in the middle where the remark that is said in the present story time is noted as, we only thought about it later. So, we're not quite in the present story time when this is being written. And then Michael goes on a tangent about, foreshadowing in fiction and how it's not like real life, which, I don't know, maybe it could make people roll their eyes a little bit when fiction does that, to say, it's almost like saying, please give me a free pass because this is fiction, right? And there should be foreshadowing, right? or, this is how the deck is played as, the writer. But I don't know, at the same time, I kind of like this a lot. I guess I have the biases, too, of being a writer myself and liking to read about writers sometimes and about the pain of the craft. And I got to admit, that was one particularly intriguing epigraph on the grave. So I don't know, I'm kind of talking myself into this one. It's a bit shorter than the first one. It's almost 300 pages rather than almost 500 pages. It takes place in Italy. Huzzah! And it's about writers angsting about writing and dead writers. Maybe I'll learn something. So I kind of feel like I'm cheating a little bit, but I think I'm going to go put this one on my TBR for October. But I'm going to keep this one in the wings, I think, for a special page 112 tag in November. So this will come up again at least. So stay tuned. So that about covers it for me now. You can find the Goodreads links for all of these books linked down below. I also use this time to give a special shout out to TBR games that are played largely in the YA BookTube community. They started them, I think, as a way to amp up their own reading, and I really like the idea, and I feel like this tag is kind of in line with that, because this is my way to sort of be a little bit spontaneous in the moment rather than adhere to TBRs I set out months ago only, like the rest of the books for this month anyway. So I wanted to highlight one of the particular games that I've seen online, and one of them that's kind of interesting that a few people are playing is Bingo. They're using bingo boards to decide their monthly TBRs, but I mean, it's not a technical game of bingo, because that's really impossible. Like, you can't have a readable reading list with bingo, because it'll take way too many tries to get that bingo. But people have done really creative things with that game then to both get a good reading list in the moment and also do stuff with the bingo boards. So I will link to some of those people's playlists down below. I hope to be back on Friday or nearabouts with my latest Friday reads, but what that really means is that I gotta get off this thing right now, get through post-production and posting it and all of that stuff, because I got plenty of reading I should be doing in the next week. This is just the tip of that iceberg. So anyway, thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.